Hello lads and welcome to this live stream. I know I haven't live streamed in quite a while, but is what it is. I have indeed joined. Today we are going, as the title suggests, to be talking about none other than the Chelsea, Wolves, Liverpool, Man City Premier League matches last week of the season. If you're interested about these kind of live stream philosophy plus discussion of football, watching football together, then let me know in the chats or the comments below if you're watching this from third person, because of course we are going to be talking about more football next season as well. And if you want me to do more of these streams where you can have kind of a community session together, then feel free to let me know about that. Now, of course, if you have any philosophical questions, then let me know your arguments there as well. Now, philosophical questions are coming in thick and fast. I'll be answering them in a bit. Give me a moment, because right now I'm just getting all my different streams up right now, so it's a bit of a mess, my computer. So give me a second. I'm just kind of getting into it all, but I might need a bit of time first, just to set everything up. So it's a bit of a mess, but it is what it is. Now, give me a moment first. I've seen some interesting questions in the chat already. However, I apologize. I have not been able to do anything about them yet. I will be answering very quickly. I'm sorry, this is a bit of a mess. I'm just kind of trying to get all the different football matches up onto my screen, which I'm not even sure if it's possible, but temporary service unavailable. That's unfortunate. Says my Chelsea stream is not working right now. Unfortunately, let's try again. Now, give me a moment, lads. I apologize. I will be doing this in a very, very quick time when everything gets fixed. There is something horribly wrong with my computer right now. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but it is what it is. Give me a moment. Yep, so this does seem to work. Now, all right, lads. Okay, so everything is indeed being set up. And without further ado, let's get right in and start talking and answering your questions. So the first question that we're going to be asking is, what are your thoughts on the Shroud of Turin and as empirical evidence for the existence of Jesus Christ outside the Bible? Now, I think that this is a very interesting question. I personally wouldn't say I know too much about the Shroud of Turin. I don't think that my understanding of kind of theological matters in that sense is sufficient, or at least very developed. However, at the same time, I would say that I think that a lot of times, I think it's very easy for Christians to jump at absolutely everything in order to try to demonstrate, or at least jump at, to prove the existence of God. And I think that that's definitely something that Christians have to try to avoid. It's not something to say that, oh, you see some evidence and then you have to try to change it, but rather it's more like saying, well, there is some problem here, or there is this argument, and let us look critically at the relationship between the two and say, well, yes, this thing is actually good evidence, or this is bad evidence, and we shouldn't be just looking for evidence for the sake of looking for evidence. And I think that that can be quite harmful. Now, also, another thing which I think is quite important, or something that we can think about, is also the idea of the Shroud of Turin being something which is more symbolic, and the idea that regardless of whether it actually is evidence or it is not, it doesn't really matter as long as it provides kind of development and help for people. And this will be the more anti-realist form of religion, which, while I wouldn't say is completely something that I subscribe to, it's definitely something that you can think about and say, well, while this might not exactly be religious, it definitely is. It has a potential to have such a nature, or at least such an influence as well. Now, what are your thoughts on Camus? I think that Camus is an interesting thinker. I find him, out of the few existentialist, absurdist thinkers, as the most honest and the most interesting one, mainly because I do think that the interaction that he has with the idea of the absurd is quite reasonable, just because if you're really thinking about it, instead of trying to create meaning in a meaningless world, which I think is quite a futile perception, or it's quite a futile pursuit, what Camus is trying to say is that, yeah, it's fine that there isn't that much meaning in this traditional sense, but rather that in some sense the real meaning or the real value is about acceptance of the situation right now. And I think that that has quite a strong psychological significance to it, to say that, well, part of the journey is accepting the struggles in life. And I think that that has psychological significance. And in fact, if God doesn't exist, it'll be way more reasonable philosophically and metaphysically to suggest that there is no meaning in an absurdist position instead of an existentialist position, which tells you to create meaning. So I think that that is a difference as well. Now, do you think that when the Kant says the unconscious is structured like a language, it refers to unconscious as constitutive of both the signified and signifiers, and are they equally as real? I think that's a very, very interesting question, and I think one of the questions that you have to think about when you're looking at this is really to say, well, all right, is the structure and is the situation that we're looking at here, it's like, what on earth does Lacan mean when he says the unconscious is structured like a language? Because the truth is that it can be like pictured or illustrated in multiple different formats. For example, I'll try to get it on my AirPods, but if we look at language as something which is, because of course there's two views of how language works, right? There's the idea of Wittgenstein, who argues that limits of the language are the limits of my world, in some sense, that language is itself part of, or language is itself a form of the world. In some sense, perhaps a Wittgensteinian would argue that the unconscious is language as much as a conscience. However, what you would say here as well, I think you give a good point about the signified and signifiers. I do think that in some sense you may say that even with language, there's still a gap between the signified and the signifiers, such that it is almost impossible for us to understand actually what it means to be the signified or the signifier when we are in discussion. And what I mean by that is to say, well, when we're having a discussion with each other, especially about abstract concepts like love or emotion, it is very difficult for us to say, well, this certain idea is indeed like, this idea is the signifier, this idea must be the signified. And in fact, when we say, I love this person, right? What on earth does that mean? And since language cannot fully encompass what these things mean, in some ways, language, the idea of them being or having to be viewed as real is insufficient and arguably slightly misleading, perhaps. And you can suggest that that is the case. I hope that answers the question. If you want me to elaborate on that more, then feel free to let me know, and I'll talk about that a bit more. Now, do you think Occam's Razor can be applied to religious systems? Because religions are usually quite complex. Yes, I do think that this is a very interesting question, and I think that it's very difficult for us to fully figure out how to view religious language with Occam's Razor, because the truth is that when you're looking at Occam's Razor, when you're looking at something in the argument, I do think that it's very difficult to say, well, Occam's Razor, this is a Lamb cosmological argument, or this is a teleological argument. That's very simple. Well, that is the answer. Or, let's try to deconstruct everything into its minimal parts and then use Occam's Razor on those minimal parts without actually reaching out to the broader structure in which it is in. And as a result, I genuinely would like to say that Occam's Razor cannot be applied to a Christianity in the same way that a lot of people say, well, Kalam cosmological argument is simple, whatever. Those appeal to Occam's Razor, I would say, is really insufficient. That being said, however, I do think that it is possible to suggest that, well, if we do want to look at other things like, um, if we want to look at other things like maybe just the discussion of a few religions put together, you may then say that, well, in that circumstance, yes, Occam's Razor is correct. Or maybe you could say, well, let us try to look at a few different religions put together, maybe monotheism vs polytheism. And then you could say, well, okay, religion is then one religion is better than the other. You may say, well, Christianity is better than the Greco-Roman religion because of Occam's Razor. Then that would be system, looking at the system as a whole, you would say that one is better than the other. Now, and I think that that would be the way you look at Occam's Razor with religion. I don't think you could say, well, Occam's Razor, okay, Christianity is better, or the other one is not as good. I think you really have to look at it as the whole thing, and you can't really reduce Christianity or any theistic belief into one of its beliefs just to use Occam's Razor. There, I don't think that is quite intellectually valid or reasonable. Chelsea goes 1-0 up against Watford. That is great. Sounds good. Looks good as well. Havertz with the goal, opening the scoring. Let me also try to get a Premier League, Premier League, so I can just keep my eye out on the other scores. Chelsea Watford is the first goal out of all of them. That looks good. Now, give me a moment. I need to tile this to the right and then tile this to the left. Okay. Do I think that religion should be part of the government and taught as a definite fact in school? I don't think it should be taught as a definite fact in school. In fact, I recently made a video on the dangers of religion. I think that, well, actually not the dangers of religion, but rather the dangers of education. I do think that by teaching things purely as definite facts does become very dangerous, both for things which are actually true and things which are false. Just because I think that by teaching something as a definite fact, it reduces the ability to think critically about concepts. And a lot of problems in society we see today is about teachers saying, well, this is a fact, this is a fact, this is exactly what you must believe, instead of promoting critical thinking. I think that that is actually quite a dangerous thing to do, and I think that that is quite unfortunate. Now with that in mind, I will also say that religion should play a role in the government, in the sense that you always have to think about the religious implications of a governmental policy. For example, you shouldn't be a good example of this would be the situation with the who do you call it? The situation with wearing hijabs in France or one of those countries where they keep on saying, well, you have to do a certain thing, or you have to have a certain belief, or you have to not wear a hijab, or you have to wear a hijab, right? In those situations, you may say, well, yes, the government should use their common sense to realize that certain beliefs may be harmful for all parties. And as a result, these things have to play a role in the government. So I do think that it really depends on the situation. And I would say it's more important that the government take consideration to that, as schools also, more so than schools. Though at the same time, I do think that schools have to consider the nature of religion when they're interacting with students, just because I do think that a lot of times, a lot of schools will do things which do make religious students or atheistic students uncomfortable. And I think that those things have to change and have to be developed. So I do think that it really depends on the situation, and you really have to take things into consideration and use your common sense, because I do think that common sense will help a lot of the situations. I think sometimes the biggest problem with this religion, separation of church and state, does have a limit and is not as well defined as people would like to think. You know how all those new atheists say, oh, separation of church and state. I don't think it is as simple as that. Now, do you think, okay, just before we get into that question, it does look like Wolves is 1-0 up against Liverpool. Now, we also have to remember that Liverpool have to win this game in order to have a chance to go top of the table to win the Premier League. So now they've 1-0 down against Wolves. That is indeed interesting, and it is quite crazy. Saul Niguez is looking very, very good. He's had a few good shots, and in fact, he might be trying to stay at Chelsea next year if he continues a very, very good, masterful performance. And I think he has been unlucky because he hasn't been given too many chances, and of course he didn't start off in the best way. Though I do think that perhaps in some ways, if we manage to extend his loan into next season, that might be quite good as well. Now that we've talked about that, let us talk a bit about, do you think God is an example of Kantian sublime? Would it be the mathematical sublime or dynamic sublime or both? Well, I do think that there's a danger to say it is that which is the Kantian sublime, just because I do think it is almost impossible to. I do think that Kant's analysis of the sublime is tied in directly with his belief in God, in the sense that I think that his belief in the sublime is in some ways inspired by the existence of God, or at least his conception of God as the transcendental, whatever you want to call it, right? But at the same time, I would say that it's not necessarily an equation, or you could say it is perhaps an example of, because I think it's more reasonable to say that it's actually the other way around, to say that the Kantian sublime is an example of God instead of the other way around. And I think that that is indeed a difference, because I don't think that you can say that they're exactly the same, and it's not very helpful to do it in that sense. Had a good chance, a few good chances here. That wasn't a foul, though. That was a good touch. Unfortunately, Rudiger is going last game for Chelsea. Quite sad, unfortunate, but it is what it is. We have to live with it, I suppose. Off to Spain, I guess, for Antonio Rudiger. What a madness. And it's quite sad, to be honest, for Rudiger to leave. I mean, it does feel quite bad. I mean, I suppose we could have done better. There's this part of me which thinks, yeah, maybe we could have done better to keep Rudiger. But at the same time, other times, like, we're offering him massive wages. Is that really, like, should we mess up our wage structure? Though you could say that we've already messed up our wage structure enough with Lukaku, that surely Lukaku doesn't, well, Rudiger deserves as much wages as Lukaku, but it is what it is. These things happen in football. Just a highlight or an update around the league. It's 0-0 at all the grounds, apart from Liverpool, where Wolves lead 1-0, and also at Chelsea Watford, Chelsea lead 1-0 thanks to a goal from Kai Havertz. For Liverpool right now, Pedro Neto scored a goal in the 3rd minute, which is really going to make things a bit more pressured for everyone involved. Now, of course, Leeds United also have to win their game in order to have a chance to go up against Burnley and stay in the Premier League, so it is quite big pressure for them as well. Now, I suppose we can go back and talk a bit about religion playing a part in the government, because I do think that it is going to be difficult to always judge it in one way or another, because I do think that each way it goes, it is going to be quite interesting and quite difficult to judge exactly how to do it, or how to balance both of them together. Okay, Todd Bowley is here watching. Hopefully he is enjoying the match so far. Tottenham 1-0 up against Norwich City. Of course, top 4 is in Tottenham's hands. If they do win, they are going to become Champions League football next year. Dejan Kulusevski with that goal. That seems good. Leeds United 1-0 up. Leeds United might go up. I mean, Newcastle's beating Burnley right now. This might be interesting. I mean, if Leeds, or was it disallowed? That is interesting. That can go horribly wrong. Now, give me a moment. I'm looking at this. Okay, so finally, I will actually. There's actually quite a lot of goals going on now. Newcastle's 1-0 up. Who scored? Callum Wilson penalty. That might be difficult. Let us look at this. Do you believe in the existence of God in a metaphysical sense, or do you just find it cathartic to believe in something even if you don't really? Yeah, that makes sense. I do think that God exists in a metaphysical sense. I think that that's necessary for Christianity, because if Christ wasn't God in a metaphysical sense, then how on earth? There is a massive question on how on earth did he rise from the dead. So I do believe in God in a metaphysical sense, though I do also think that it has very strong psychological benefits as well. Now, in this channel, I don't really talk about the metaphysical side of God, just because I don't really think that it really convinces anyone, in the sense that I've known loads of people who've argued for and against the existence of God constantly, but then have never really come to either really believe in God's existence or not believe in God's existence. I don't think that providing a complex argument about something is really helpful. So as a result, I don't really talk about that on this channel. I talk more about like psychological, existential arguments surrounding the existence of God, instead of really wrestling with, does God exist in a metaphysical sense? However, it is what it is. I do think that some people would say it's cathartic, and that's kind of the reason why they believe in God. And sure, though I would like them to really think about, well, is that really Christianity, or is that more just a form of Christian existentialism? I don't think they're exactly all the same, and I think you have to really balance the two together. Now, I think that that's a very good question. It's an important question to ask as well. It's like, well, what's the nature of your Christian faith? I think you have to analyze that as well, and I think that is quite important. Now, the next question is, have you read much Solzhenitsyn, and if so, what are your thoughts about his impact on society and political thinking? I have unfortunately not read that much of Solzhenitsyn. I know of him and I know of his philosophy, though I wouldn't answer the question just because I don't think I am an authority in any sense to talk about Solzhenitsyn. I just don't know enough about Solzhenitsyn to talk in depth about it, and I think that is something which definitely I have to keep my mind on, and I think that that's a bit of a madness. In Gospel, Jesus assured his disciples that they know he will have a second coming when they love. Does that mean the second coming has already come in the form? Well, I think that there's two forms of looking at the second coming. The first form of the second coming is the idea that he will come back, and that's a judgment day, the second coming as seen in Revelations, perhaps. However, what we do see here, I would say, is that there's a second coming of Christ coming in this form of the Holy Spirit, and then that has already occurred, and And the illustration, the metaphor of that is indeed the tongues of fire at Pentecost, right? And I think that that would be the second coming in that sense as well. So it really depends on the perspective in which you're looking at things, and then you have to analyze it in that sense. And I think that that is definitely very, very important. So I do think that there's two forms of viewing of the second coming, though of course when you're talking to a Christian, the normal view of the second coming really is the idea of the second coming as in judgment day, and I don't think that has come yet, mainly because we are still here indeed, and I think that that is perhaps undeniable. Now we are continuing watching this football, and it is a madness. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or any questions, any follow-up questions as well. Feel free to go ahead on and do that as well. I think that is fine and decent. Wait, did Sadio Mane score a goal? Are they back in? Is Liverpool back in the game? Some Liverpool fans been posting about Liverpool's equalised, so that makes things interesting. Harvard's asking for a penalty. Ooh, is that going cross? Good clearance, good clearance. We'll just call you Dave. We'll just call him Dave. I cannot spell. Aspilicueta. We'll just call him Dave. Rooting for Brighton? Yeah, man, I mean, still early days, still early days. I have to admit my pre-Socratic philosophy isn't as strong as I would like to have. I would like it to be. However, I would say that I'll probably have been I don't even know how you pronounce that. Militzin? Is that how you pronunciate it? Yeah, I know my pre-Socratic, so I'm very good. Like the Shojinitsin question, I genuinely can't speak in much authority over this one. Madness. It's an absolute madness. Now let's look at the Premier League table. We got the table up standings. Now, Burnley can't lose. If they lose, as things stand, going through, it's a pain. Yeah, that. So I have to admit, I don't know enough about either philosophy to make a very clear distinction about that. Oh, back post with a score. Ooh, good save, good save, good save. I mean, you would expect him to save it, but good save, good save, good save, lads. If you want me to switch to any games, other games to watch, then feel free to let me know. I'm keeping my eyes out on them, though I am watching Chelsea against Watford. Did Mendy kick that out, or was that a header out? That's a very good question. Nietzsche's distinction between the Polonian and the Dionysian. Given I want to what I want to wait for them to clear this ball. Saul's good. Like, I mean, that's the thing, with Saul. He does some moments of magic and then does some moments of madness. It's like that guy when the Gattuso or something. It's like sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. Like that's basically what I think when I watch Saul. It's like he's sometimes really really good at what he does, and then sometimes I just look at him and I'm like, what on earth are you doing, mate? What on earth are you doing? And who knows? I think that his inconsistency will indeed be the end of him, and that's why it didn't work that well at Chelsea. Okay, I don't know if I feel kind of like, lads, I'm not very good at socializing, but then someone's on the Oxford thing, they're from China, and I'm just asking them what they like about ancient and modern history, about what they're studying, and they said ancient modern history, and I asked them, well, what part of history are you interested in? I'm not even sure if that's correct an answer, but never mind, it is what it is. Ben Chilwell's back, yeah. Okay, so time to get back into thoughts on Nietzsche's distinction between the Polonian and the Dionysian, birth of the tragedy. Well, I do think that Nietzsche's distinction between the Polonian and Dionysian is quite good as a structural or psychological analysis. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the very, very best kind of distinction out there. I think there are better distinctions, but at the same time, I do think it is helpful, and I do think that it is at least useful in understanding the distinction of both sides of the rationality and the more emotional side. And I think while there are other categories which you can think about, and when whenever it comes to such distinctions, you have to recognize that such distinctions are insufficient. Nevertheless, and I want to say this caution, I do really appreciate Nietzsche's contribution. I do use this distinction a lot. If you talk to me, I'm a philosopher, I do talk about this, the mix between the Dionysian and the Apollonian. However, I do think that, I do think it is very helpful at face value, and it is useful as well. Now, are there limits to it? I do think there are, and I think you have to kind of delve way deeper in order to understand it. But as two main categories, I do think that the distinction between Apollonian and the Dionysian is very helpful and very useful in that. Now, do you think that it is interlinked with the Freudian death drive and life drive? No, I don't necessarily think so. I think that when you're looking at the Dionysian and the Apollonian, yes, you could say almost it is that kind of mix between. There's almost this subtle nature of almost a slave morality against the will to power. Though I would at the same time say that it isn't exactly the case either. Because it could almost be summarized into the idea of the usage of the rational against the usage of the irrational, or the more emotional, right? And you can just think about the two gods, right? The god of Dionysus and Apollo. They kind of represent the two ideas of the sun, the light, right? And would you say that's exactly the same as a death drive? I wouldn't say so, but at the same time, I wouldn't say it's completely opposite. I do think it's a mix of both, and you kind of just have to analyze and kind of balance between the two to figure out, well, is this, in what circumstances can it perhaps, the outskirts of this theory might fall into the death drive, or maybe some other parts of it might fall into life drive. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that it is a perfect match or it has a good link to it, nor would I say that one of them directly influences the other. And if there is a connection, it will be more so of a Jungian synchronicity instead of an actual kind of causation or an influence. But now, so much for Arsenal. Tottenham is up 2-0 against Norwich, and so much for Arsenal. Arsenal are 2-0 up against Everton, but unless something really, really happens, well, nothing's going to change. I don't think that Tottenham are going to bottle it. I mean, yes, they are bottle job FC, but still, I don't think 2-0 up against Norwich City. I don't think that. I don't think that could possibly be the case. Has City scored yet? City still 0-0. Let's look at the stats. 5-0 against 1 shots on target. 5 shots on target. Possession dominated by City. Way more passes, way higher pass accuracy. So, I mean, City still have it in control. So they really need to try to score this. Yeah, that was a bad tackle. I got none of the ball at all. Not a good tackle at all. Okay. Oh, good save. Good to get the second one up. He still has the ball. Saul Kennedy. We just have to shoot the bloody ball, man. Get so close, lads. Get so close, lads. I will answer Benji's question first. What relationship do you think philosophy has with logic and maths? Well, I think that math, at its core, is philosophy, especially if you look at axiomatic theories of math. Now there's other forms of math, like intuitionism and other things like that, though I do think that the common accepted mode of mathematics right now is intuitionism. No, it's axiomatic, at least for the piano axioms, and most of math that we learn today are based on these axiomatic structures. And in order to form these axiomatic structures, philosophy is absolutely vital, and as a result, there's good reason to believe that logic and maths is indeed based on philosophy, and that philosophy plays a massive role in it. Now I do think that you can, and as a result, okay, let me reframe my entire thoughts. My thoughts were completely interrupted by this perfect through ball to Kai Havertz, and he took a bit too long to take a shot and then missed it. I was on the edge of my seat. But let me try to rephrase it. I would say that the relationship between philosophy, logic, and maths is profound because at the core of mathematics and most logics is an axiomatic system. Now, of course, not all philosophy is a result of axiomatic systems. There are forms of logic and forms of math which are more intuitionist based. Nevertheless, I would say that the majority of the schools of thought surrounding maths, at least today, is based on axiomatic systems, and the nature of axiomatic systems are such that philosophy is a part of it. For example, it's almost impossible to think of axiomatic set theory, especially infinite sets, without turning to philosophy. both form Cantor's original formulation, naive set theory, to more, and of course, naive set theory isn't exactly axiomatic, but even then, I think is a good example for why this is very important indeed. Now, I also do think that with logic, it is ultimately philosophy because, well, it is the more analytic tradition. Of course, you could say the continental tradition is less so based on logic in the stricter sense. However, analytical philosophy is very much based on logic, and as a result, I would say that it is inseparable in both sense, unless you want to take a really strong form of intuitionism or something like that. Then you might be able to suggest that philosophy plays a bit less. However, even if you do take a strong form of intuitionism, you will still have to answer the question of, well, why intuitionism instead of axiomatic or whatever? And then that itself would be a philosophical question. So I do think it is inseparable. That's interesting, and perhaps Kant would have a say about that as well. Would you consider yourself in favor of capitalism? Do you think it is more or less vulnerable to corruption than explicitly totalitarian systems like communism? Well, I would say that I would genuinely say I favor capitalism way more than communism, just because of all the horrors that communism caused and the intrinsic nature that communism or such states have the ability, or such states have the innate nature in order to cause evil and suffering. And as a result, I would always favor capitalism over communism. And I do think that almost every single state which tries to be socialist or communist itself does seem to presuppose some form of capitalist presupposition at the base of it, just because no matter how far you try to escape from it, you're fundamentally stuck to the capitalist way of analysis. For example, the entirety of Marx makes absolutely no sense under a non-capitalist structure or viewing of the world. And you could say, well, Marx tries to produce a structure of the world which isn't capitalist. However, that would be completely nonsense, because the idea of class and the idea of capital, or the idea of trade, is itself based on a fundamentally capitalist kind of substructure. So in some sense, I would say that no matter where you go, even if you call yourself a communist structure, you would undeniably have capitalist elements, which would make any attempt to move away from it completely absurd, in such a way that I would say there's good reason to believe that communism is a failed system and that capitalism is always going to have a hand up over all of its counterparts, just because it is the best way to analyze the world. So I hope that that kind of analysis provides good use to it. Now, of course, I made a video about the usefulness of education as well. You guys can feel free to go check that out as well. Now, supposedly quite a funny comment on one of these videos. I was talking about one of the problems, and then this lad made quite a. I always never know. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below, right? If someone constantly puts stupid comments on a video, is that a justification to block them? Because I genuinely can't be asked to answer or respond to these questions anymore. And I don't mean this in a malicious way, right? But it's come to a point where I really think that this guy has absolutely no intention to really search for anything which is valuable or the truth, but rather mainly just focused on his own biases. And I genuinely normally don't say this, right? But I'm not sure whether it is justified to block this lad on the channel or just completely ignore him, because some of the stuff which has come out from that lens has been a bit mad. So feel free to let me know in the comments below whether you think that I should block this lad or just leave him be. I genuinely have no idea what on earth I'm meant to do. As I've said, I'm not very good with these things. Oh my gosh, Villa are leading 1-0. I mean, this might be crazy. I mean, anything can happen. I mean, seriously. I mean, like, I mean, 1-0 up. I mean, it's not a lead, but it isn't bad either. One shot on target, one goal. I mean, that's. I mean, imagine the Premier League went down to that. I mean, that would be crazy. Because right now, as it is, I think that Liverpool still have to score. They're still 1-1. However, things may just happen. As things stand, Liverpool still have to win, but they do have a chance. They do have a chance to never say never, you know? Goal difference definitely not going to come in, but anything can happen now. Ooh, that's what AMH stood for. Ah. I mean, anything can happen. Wait, is Manchester United losing? Oh my gosh! United in the mud, lads. United in the mud. United in the mud, lads. 1-0 down to Wilfred Zaha. All right. Well, I think that if people commit crimes or unethical acts in the name of religion, would the religion be ultimately responsible for the crime or unethical act? Well, I think that we have to have a very objective kind of way to look at it and say, well, if it really is psychologically speaking, and of course we can never judge this fully, right? But if psychologically speaking, the religion is indeed the cause of it, you will say yes, the religion is responsible for it. But the problem is that a lot of times although things are done in the name of religion, it actually isn't religion isn't the actual cause. And if you want to look at things historically speaking, it would be inaccurate to say that religion is the true cause. For example, if you look at the Inquisition, for example, when we are looking at the Inquisition, you do realize very quickly that it actually wasn't religion which was the main cause of the Inquisition, but rather political and economical acts. And in those situations, most of the time, we see that at least things on the big scale, like the Inquisitions, like the Crusades, a lot of these can be indeed put down to political and economic reasons instead of actually religious reasons. Is it to say that religion never played a role in it? No, but I do think that most of the times there are actually overriding factors which aren't religion when it comes to these situations. Now, now also I do think that there's a different thing as well, saying, well, I think there also is a difference between religion being responsible for something and also religion being bad. Because I think that something can be responsible for a horrible action, but at the same time not necessarily be something which is bad. For example, I would not say that some form of nihilistic philosophy is responsible for people killing themselves as a result of that nihilistic philosophy, though at the same time you could say it is responsible for it. So I do think that there has to be kind of a stronger distinction being made between the philosophy itself and also the action surrounding it, even though we have to, of course, take into consideration the context of the philosophy, and as a result, I would recommend, of course, everyone to stay away from nihilistic philosophies as a result of that. Nevertheless, I do think there has to be a bit more nuance when we interact with these questions and these ideas. Hope that answered the question, and we'll see how that goes. If science and maths are found on intuitive idea that they are true, should they continue being studied if there is a likely possibility of their notions being false? Well, I think they should be continued to be studied because there is a great sense of practicality when it comes to math, which goes beyond the mere form of, oh, I have a percentage of it being correct, and you have a percentage of it being false, or you even have an intuitive idea. Even if it's completely intuitive, there is a very strong pragmatic application, and it seems that these kind of science and math, which let's assume are intuitive, no matter what happens, um, there does seem to suggest that due to the practicality and its applicability, there would still be a reason to study them, and that wouldn't be crazy. What are your thoughts on Rand, and do you think morals are? Why did I say morals? What are your thoughts on Rand, and do you think morals are objective? I don't know anything about Rand. Do I know anything about Rand? I know a lot about Rand in the sense of the research, in the sense of the research organization instead of Ayn Rand, if that's the Rand that you're referring to. But do you think that morals are objective? I do think morals are objective in the sense that, well, I I think it's a mix between objectivity and subjectivity, almost a transsubjectivity as the grounding for objective morals. And the reason why I say this is because I think that everyone goes through a different circumstance, and in every single circumstance, the moral required for the individual situation cannot be always summarized into a set of rules because situations are infinitely realizable and different, such that no rule can possibly encapsulate all situations. And as a result, there's almost some sense of the way to live ethically is to understand being and try to unveil being in the world to further your understanding of such concepts. And while it's not necessarily to say that morals are now subjective, it's to say that the drive or the pursuit of this form of being, this form of love, is precisely the nature of the good, or it is precisely this drive of love which is simultaneous or the same as the drive for, or this drive of understanding being is itself the objectively good act, and it's objective for everyone to pursue this form of understanding and this interaction with the world. So I do think that while it is objective in a sense, it also can be subjective in another way you look at it. So it depends on your perspective, though I do think that it is ultimately at its very foundations objective. Ultimately, do you think do you think it matters if a religion is true, if it adds meaning to people's lives and allows a structure for them to live in? I think that it does matter if a religion is true, though at the same time, if it does add meaning to people's lives, then it shouldn't be immediately dismissed. Because I do think that a structure and a meaning is ultimately the most important thing in people's lives. However, if it's based on complete lie, then there is almost a fundamental problem or fundamental flaw in this. And as a result, you could perhaps check out a video that I made previously on saying, well, is the Bible the precondition of truth? And in some sense, you would say, well, yes, the Bible is a precondition of truth. Religion is the precondition for truth because it provides a structure in which truth is valued, and it provides a lens in which truth should be interacted with, right? So in that sense, you would say, well, it doesn't matter if a religion is true. However, on a more metaphysical sense, then you would say, yes, it does matter if religion is true, because if the religion is not true and metaphysically it is false, then, well, that leads to all sorts of problems. So I do think that there is ultimately a massive kind of struggle between the two ideas, and you have to kind of figure out which is the best way forward or the best kind of solution to this kind of situation. Now, can there ever be such a thing as objective truth? I do think there can be such a thing as an objective truth, though it depends on how you define objective, because I do think in some sense transsubjectivity is almost the same as objective if you want to look at it in the strictest possible sense. Of course, actually in the less strict sense, in the strictest possible sense, objective truth will always be faced with the problem of solipsism, and I think that or almost some sense of Cartesian skepticism, and it's almost impossible for us to fully kind of solve or remove that problem. Nevertheless, I do think that if objective truth is defined in a looser sense, and as a result is viewed in some sense, a transsubjectivity or some transsubjective approach, then I do think you could say that there are objective truths. So it really depends on your perspective on what objective truth means and how kind of strict you are with the definition. I'm going to grab some food. Actually, I'll let you guys decide. It's currently midnight in Hong Kong. Benji knows that as well. Should I go get and eat myself some instant noodles? I'm very tempted to get myself some instant noodles. I am starving. I am starving. Yeah, glad you enjoyed it. Have a great day. I will go get some food as well, because I'm starving. This is true. My dear friend Benji has just justified myself to get instant noodles at midnight. I am going to go get some food, lads. I'm sorry it is quite late, but I will be back in a bit. I apologize. Let me put my food banner back on. Where is my food banner? So that people who just joined the stream, but yeah, you're not on study leave, Benji. All right, have a great one, lads. I'll see you soon. I wonder if anyone else will join the stream. If no one else joins the stream, it's fine. I'll eat and watch football to myself. That doesn't matter too much. It is what it is. On food, will be back. Mi amigos, have a great day at school tomorrow, mi amigo. And I will see you soon. Stay safe, Benji. And have a great day tomorrow. I wonder what your Philosophy Society will be on next Tuesday. And I can't wait for that. See you soon. And I will be back in a few seconds, lads. Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing today? I've returned. I need more water. I'll be back in a second. Hello, I have returned. We're going to be. I've cooked myself for lunch. I decided not to make myself instant noodles, to be honest. Decided to make myself a bit more sophisticated. So it took a bit longer time, but it is what it is, I suppose. Still 1-0 up. Still good. No problem at all. Let's look at what's going on. The rest of the Premier League. Arsenal 2-1 up. Wolves still 1-1. Brighton 1-1 against West Ham. I mean, anything can happen now. Oh man. You know what the thing is, right? It's nice. I put some soy sauce in the cook as well, and that was quite good. Kennedy hasn't had many chances throughout his years at Chelsea, but it is what it is. It's been a good journey. I mean, he hasn't played that much, but he has indeed played a role at times. And I don't have any horrible thoughts of him or mistakes, so it's always Thiago Silva saving our backline. We were in absolute shambles. What the hell was that? Good pass up to Ziyech. Liverpool just got a goal denied. I think they're dominating the game as well. Let's see what's happening at City. Loads of shots, 12 shots. I mean, Thiago Silva completely under control as well. What happened to my food? Arsenal's doing quite good. 3-1 Everton. That turns out the person I was talking to is from the same college as I, or going to the same college as I next year. What a coincidence. Down the line to Reece James. Would it go? Of course, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the chat about football or philosophy or whatever in between. After Mount, that was a bad pass. That was a bad pass. Well, that was a good start. I got some quite good eggs as well. This is nice. I think going back to 4 at the back now with sorry, I dropped my fork on the table. Oh well. Burnley. As things stand, Burnley's relegated, you know? And Leeds, they survive. It's good. Man City 66 minutes. Oh, good save. Good shot. I mean, it wasn't top bins, but I mean, it wasn't bad either. Has to hit the target from there. One Liverpool, I mean. Liverpool don't win this game and City lose, they'll beat themselves up about it, really. They really would beat themselves up about it, I think. Honestly, the more we don't kill this game off, the more I think that we might actually lose this game, to be honest. Not lose it, but like not win it. Okay. GG. Arsenal. Tottenham go 4-0 up. No way on earth they're going to lose now. Unlucky from Ross Barkley. That's weird. Harvard's dropping into that almost as a number 8. This is really strange. Liverpool are going to have to win their game. I mean, they really beat themselves up, you know, if Liverpool. Oh my gosh. Aston Villa 2-0. Oh my gosh. No, I'm going to go watch the City game. I don't care, man. I'm watching the City game now. You're going to go. Jesus is offside. Jesus. What the hell? That's... It's offside though. Blimey. The Aston Villa fans are bantering the City fans. Man, oh man, oh man. Oh my god. Did you have the feeling that if any player was going to come in clutch, it would be Foden? There's nothing dangerous. Oh no! Oh. Oh. It had to go in though. Ooh. Nothing the goalkeeper could do. Ooh. Now Villa either park the bus or try to go for it. Oh! Ooh. Still should have done better. They surely have to start throwing people forward now. Oh my god. No way. What the hell? That was a good 1 foot. Ooh. That was a good pass. Nothing anyone can do about it. Good shot. They need a hold. They need a hold. Last 10 minutes. Rodri going for the phenomenal again. Oh my gosh, this is insane. This is simply a madness. Simply a madness. Chelsea still 1-0. Leicester comfortable win. Man City 2-2. Liverpool 1-1. Anything could happen. I mean, it is going towards another Aguero moment. And surely Everton would score. No, sure Liverpool would score a goal. Surely they can. Oh my god. Is it? Oh my god! Just when you think it's dead. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What are we witnessing? What the hell? What the hell? What the hell? This is insane. This is madness. Oh my gosh. 3-2 City. Oh second balls. Pep was talking about second balls when he came in, and now, oh my gosh. That's the second balls, and need to get the second balls, and De Bruyne is on the second ball, and again and again and again, drives forward, passes the ball. What a goal! Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is the most dramatic goal. When was this 3 goals? It was scored in the span of like what? 2 minutes? 3 minutes? It's the Aston Villa defense, man. Should have parked the bus when they were 2-0 up. Now, not saying I know better than CVG, but, you know. Three goals in 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. I think Mo Salah scored just now. Danny Ings with the ball. Finds a cross. Clear away. Laporte. Time for Stevie G to sub himself on, I suppose. Blimey. Salah scored, but would that be enough? How is Chelsea 2-1 up against Watford? What the hell? Ross Barkley with a goal. Blimey. That's why I say you need a goal. Otherwise, someone like Watford is going to drive you insane. There's another chance. Oh. 3 goals. Three goals, what the hell? You can't even write this. You can't even write this. Oh my gosh. What a day. What a day. Time wasting now. This is just heartbreaking. Will Aston Villa find something to score? Will they? This is some very nice time wasting here, isn't it? Oh man. Two minutes left. 2 minutes on the clock. One minute left. Win the second ball. Is it going to be it? Oh my gosh, how the hell did that happen? How did that happen? Oh my gosh. It's actually insane. 5 goals? Five, 3 goals? My god. 3 goals in 5 minutes. That's actually insane. On that note, it is indeed 1 a.m. in the morning. I'm going to head off now. Stay safe, my friends. See you soon. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. I'll see you next one.